Boys, we are once again live on the YouTube on the Weekenders channel. We have I'm sure, a massive number of people tuning in to listen to me, Marshall Hook, Ted Johnson, and Billy Lanni joining us this week. Hi, Billy.
What's up, guys? How's it going?
What's up, Billy?
You guys doing all right? Doing all right. Yourselves?
Doing good, bud. Good. Good to see you, man. Good to see both of you, Jamokes.
You too, man.
You know, it is remarkable. Billy and I were talking before you got here, Ted. I was saying how when you and I first started working together on the radio, you made me up my game tremendously, because a kind of typical weekend hosting approach is, we'll get there 10 minutes early and then we'll chat for a little bit and we'll figure it out as we go along. And then Ted Johnson comes along, and the day before, 2 days before, sometimes a week before, I'll get this email like this, like, here are all the things I want to talk about. Here are some of my thoughts. Here are links to go with it. And to be clear, I love it. I absolutely love it. But as I said, it made me prep more, because then I felt like I have to live up to the what Ted Johnson, I have to live up to what he is setting out there as the standard. And despite the fact that we're living here in a land of no sports, and we're not on the radio, but rather on the Weekenders YouTube channel, we still got a fairly long text from Ted Johnson with a bunch of stuff that he wanted to talk about, which is amazing, both because I like that you're bringing this level of game to this little project that we're doing, but there are also no sports going on right now. But there is, I feel like, a fairly good amount of chunk to actually talk about. So rest assured, we're going to do plenty of sports today. But before we get to that, I have a question for you guys, because I spent the last 2 hours out here mowing the lawn.
Boy.
And I know that there are people who hate mowing the lawn. Like, I've talked to a lot of people in my neighborhood here. They're like, you've got kids old enough. Why aren't you making them mow the lawn?
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, I love mowing the lawn. I don't want to give mowing the lawn up. It's 2 hours of effectively alone time. Like, nobody's out there talking to me when I'm mowing the lawn. I get my 10,000 steps doing nothing but mowing the lawn in 2 hours. So that's taken care of like that. And when you're done, you're able to literally just stand back and look out there and have this sense of accomplishment, because the lawn never looks better. Like, an hour from now, it's going to look worse than it does right now. It never looks better than when you have just completed mowing it. And I'm not a beer drinker, but if I were, that's the time that a lot of you would pop a cold one and sit there on your deck or in your back lawn or whatever. I have popped a cold one of my own, a diet root beer. There's nothing I don't like about mowing the lawn. Now, I know, Ted, obviously you don't have a lawn to mow, living in a condo. Billy Lanni, I don't know what your situation is, but are we in or out on lawn mowing?
Billy, you want to go first?
No, yeah, I'll go. Absolutely. I am 100% in on mowing the lawn. Throughout college, I worked at a cemetery doing landscape, and I loved it because it was 8 hours a day. I threw my headphones on. My boss would say, I need you to do here to here, and then that was it. It was the last I heard from him. It was the last I heard from anybody. So I had my headphones on, mowing the lawn, and it was great because it was an escape. It was nice. It was a nice quiet 8 hours. It was just me, a mower, and music or sports radio. You know, so I loved it, and I regret it now. I miss it now because I live in an apartment. I talk about it with my girlfriend all the time. I go, when we find a place, we're going to have a yacht, because I loved it. Like Marshall said, like when it's first done, it looks amazing. And I used to be able to have like nice lines back and forth, keep the same path. So if you looked at it at a distance, it wasn't as good as professional, but it had a different fade shades, you know, so it looked cool for that, hour, like Marshall said.
All right. Well, hey, I'll comment on that on two things. Marshall, you talked about my emails real quick. Here's the thing. When I moved back to Boston 2 years ago, I don't want to earn my keep. So when I write those emails, it's because I want to make sure I'm pulling my own weight. I don't want to be one of those former athletes that just shows up and the mic's on and just doesn't have, a whole lot to say. I want to do my part. So I enjoy those emails, and I appreciate you like getting those. So that's that. The lawn mowing for me, you guys, is one of the most therapeutic things for me I can do. I love being out in the yard. My mom, like I always had big yards growing up. I always did the yard work when I was a kid. I absolutely love it. And I'm a guy, for some whatever reason, I've always enjoyed manual labor type things. If Billy, you were to say, hey Ted, man, would you mind coming over to my house? I got these really big rocks that I need to move from one side of the yard to the other side of the yard. I'd be like, dude, call me up. I'm that guy. I love being outside. I like physical manual labor. And I'll be honest, a lot of times, I'll never forget. It's a perfect excuse. If you just want to get out of the house and get away from whatever is going on in the house, I think maybe we can all relate to sometimes like I need to get out for some fresh air. Mowing the lawn is one of my favorite physical activities to do on a nice day. So I'm with you guys. I love. And I grew up I grew up in Houston, Texas, and in just north of San Diego, California. And I'll be honest, like the New England it's not as manicured up here, right? It's more natural, right? The yards aren't, it doesn't distinguish from one property to the next a lot of times. They just kind of blend into each property. So in Houston in particular, all the yards were like, and I'm a very symmetrical guy. I like clean lines and I like symmetry. And so down south, the lawns are like perfect, and everybody was trying to outdo each other in the neighborhoods. So I love mowing the lawn. I'm with both you guys on that. Love that activity.
So, in fact, Ted, as you may recall, I spent 4 years of my youth living in Houston, Texas as well. And my brother, one of our most frequent YouTube commenters, has weighed in with mowing the lawn in Houston, Texas in July is a special level of Dante's Inferno because yes. And I assume you'll back me up on this. Not only do the lawns look different, but the grass is actually different. Like out here, you could go and roll in the nice, soft New England grass. You don't go rolling around in Texas grass. That stuff is like, it brings new meaning to the word blades of grass, because that stuff is hard, it's uncomfortable, and it can sting a little bit.
Yes.
But we also had the edging machine in Houston, because the grass would go right up to the curb, and then you would need to just cut that thing right down the middle.
And what I liked about the yards down south is you didn't want to be the house that didn't take care of their lawn. Like if you didn't manicure and keep up with your lawn, it was an eyesore in the rest of the neighborhood. So everybody was trying to outduel everybody, and edging was a key part of it. That's how you made it look, so clean. The lines were so clean. So besides the mowing, you had to have the weeding and the edging to go with it.
But last thing on the lawn.
Well, we can all agree on. Oh, sorry. We all agree that the worst part of mowing the lawn is changing the bag.
The bag.
And maybe that's why I enjoyed the cemetery so much, because I could just let it fly. I didn't have to stop every breath.
So you were doing the mulching thing in the cemetery.
Yeah, so that was it. That's the only downside, is having to change the bag. But if you give me enough gas and a fresh mower, I didn't have to just kind of let it go. Just let it fly. My main thing was like, how they are, the old school had like beds around it. So the ones you can't get the big machine in. But
Billy
when you get
Lanni's
the
got a
big
bit of
machine in, you have to go in with the manual one. So I was like lifting it up over, and I was just doing like a quick roundabout. It was, like I said, it was great just because nobody but me were out.
Mike Felger would not be happy with your signal.
Right, you guys go, and I'll try to figure this out.
He would not be happy with your signal right now.
Destroying Billy right now. He's destroying Billy.
The last thing I was going to say, your thing about the yards. This is the one thing, and obviously I can look at it because it's right here. But the way my backyard is set up is it's a neighbor on either side. I'm the yard in the middle, and they all kind of go together into one backyard. The houses kind of back up to the same spot, and there's no fences or anything. So you definitely, and I like both my neighbors, and we all get along, but there's definitely a pressure if you're the third one to mow your lawn at any given weekend, because suddenly, the ones on either side, or 2 out of 3 are looking good, and you're sitting there with in my case, I had the dandelion. So I think I was the first this weekend. So I think there's and after we're done, I'm going to continue my cashing in my man card. I'm pulling out the power washer. I'm going
Hey.
to power wash the deck.
But there is something manly about doing yard work, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, there's something about there's not a lot of activities that lend itself to feeling manly anymore. Mowing the lawn, damn it, that feels manly. It really.
No, to be fair, my 16-year-old daughter could mow the lawn just as well as I could. So that she would have. She doesn't want to be clear, and I'm fine not letting her, but she would be all over that. We'll assume that Billy Lanni will rejoin us at some time. But Ted, do you want to start football or do you want to start baseball? Those are our two big sports we're going to hit today.
Yeah, you know what? Let's do baseball. I find what's going on in baseball pretty fascinating, and so it's. The good thing about doing this show, it's kind of like a wrap up of the week's events. So obviously there was a lot of talk about what Blake Snell said and the status of Major League Baseball, players versus owners. So why don't we start there, Marshall?
Well, and I'll tell you that to just lay a little bit of the groundwork, this is kind of the way it went down and I don't know exactly when it was, a month, 2 months, 3 months, whenever it was ago, the owners and the Players Association in baseball came to an agreement of what they would do in the event that a season restarted. And I think in the simplest terms, the players were going to get a prorated portion of their contract. So if they played 3 months, then they would get 3 months of their contract, what have you. But they negotiated and they came to that deal. This week, or maybe even late last week, the owners came out and said, that's no longer going to fly. What we now want to do is just do it straight revenue sharing, profit sharing. We're going to play without fans. We've already missed half the season. So we want to take whatever profits that we make and we'll split it with you. And that's how we'll figure out, the money. And the Players Association, basically, I think Scott Boras, who's not a member of the Players Association, but obviously a big time agent in baseball, was the first to kind of come out and say, no, we had a deal. And that deal was this, and that's the deal. You can't renegotiate on the fly. Which, and this is where I'll start to insert my opinion, I'm actually on the player's side in this. Like the owners made a deal. They knew the situation when they made the deal, or at least they had a very good grasp. They can't claim that they were caught tremendously off guard by all of this. And they made a deal, and now, 2-3 months later, they're saying, no, we want a new deal. The problem, I believe, for the players is they let people like Blake Snell speak for them. Oh. And I'll tell you this, man, that's not a guy you want doing your PR for you. 100%, you don't want Blake Snell out there being the face of anything representing the players at this point. So I think that's when things went awry. But my general feeling is I'm on the players' side here. The players have a limited career. The owners get to be owners until the day they die, and then they get to take that career and hand it down to their children, right? The players have a limited career. Sure, they have guaranteed contracts, and sure, a lot of them make a lot of that money, but a lot of them don't make a lot of that money relative to other baseball players. I get it. The major league minimum is whatever it is now, $600,000, which is a tremendous salary if, you're out here in the real world. But in, the relative world of baseball players and baseball owners, that's a small salary. And they have a limited amount of time that they're able to make it. So I'm generally on the side of the players. But Billy Lanni, you got to mute your YouTube there. I just think that in general, it's a bad look for the players at this point. All right, Billy, we're getting feedback from you.
Yeah, no, I was gonna let the ex-professional athlete talk on it, but I saw the Blake Snell thing, and you're right. For the most part, I am with the players, but when you hear guys like that and that attitude, it makes it hard to root for those guys. And I've gotten to the point, and it probably sounds horrible, but this is just kind of like my quick opinion on the whole situation. I watch sports because I love them. I love teams because they're my teams. And it's gotten to get to the point where I'm like, you know what? Just put scabs out there. I know it sucks for union guys to hear that, and I understand that. But as a fan, I need something. It's terrible to tell people that, like, we can easily replace you. But when I look at it as I love the sport. I love the team. I just need to see something. At that point, it doesn't matter who's on the field. That's who I'm rooting for, and that's what I want to watch.
Your signal much better now, Billy, but you need to mute the YouTube otherwise, because we're hearing it feeding back.
I think that was my me shutting off the headphones. I figured if I disconnect the headphones, then the signal will probably boost up a little bit more.
Here's the thing about baseball players. Look, I'm pro player and for so many different reasons. Obviously, I've been on the I was a player for 10 years, so I know how I know what the owners are trying to do. I'm always kind of trying to win over on the players, but the tone deafness is just it is shocking how tone deaf Major League Baseball players are. They are so tone deaf. And they have a right to feel this way about, maybe the owners when it comes to, these issues. It's like I'm trying to shift over, but you cannot deliver your message in a way that's going to turn fans off. They are turning fans off when they are so tone deaf about their sport. They just don't realize people don't like, their attitudes and their kind of, the arrogance that they display. So Blake Snell has to understand and be more aware of how people do this sport. People right now don't like kind of how the Major League Baseball players are acting, and you got to kind of be aware of that if you're Blake Snell and know that this sport is kind of hanging on the edge right now. It can go either way, and you're not helping the matter at all, Blake Snell, when you deliver the message the way you delivered it. You have a right to feel that way, sure. But it's the delivery and how you deliver that message that is such a huge turnoff that it's such a bad. These players in Major League Baseball, they don't realize that they are kind of on the precipice of losing their game because of their attitude, because of how they think and how they behave. And it's the baseball culture, guys. Just if I can for a second. The baseball culture is shocking to me in the sense that we've all been in radio for a long time, and I would interview AJ Hinch down in Houston and just baseball people down in Houston. And it is like there could be a player that's not performing well, in a slump, has a bad attitude. And you ask the manager about the player, and all he does is like blow smoke up this player's ass and say how great. There's such a culture of kissing the player's ass. It is nauseating. It really is. The managers, other players, the front office, it's a completely different culture than I'm from. And so you create this environment, this working environment in baseball that is such a turnoff because all these guys, there's a sense of entitlement and player empowerment in baseball that is right now that is just so off the charts. The guaranteed money and the power they yield and the culture of, you don't say anything negative because then there's repercussions. It's almost like the upper management. You don't even go in the clubhouse. Like they don't even want general managers. Players don't even want general managers in the clubhouse. Like that's like off limits. Like the culture is so out of whack, and the entitlement in the players is so strong that to me it is a major turnoff. And Blake Snell, even if he's in the right. Billy, even if he's in the right and saying what he said, his delivery and his message and his tone deafness, considering what is going on in the world right now, it's just another kind of brick in the wall of a sport that to me is kind of at a point where it's gonna, it's just not a sport that I could see not being sustainable long term.
How much worse is it that it's coming from a pitcher? Somebody who only performs at his peak once every 5 days. Not saying that he doesn't put in work every other day, playing catch, working out, exercising, whatever. But when it's a guy who only has to perform once every 5 days, you kind of lose me there. Tell me, bring Mike Trout out to say that. You know what I mean? Bring Betts out to say that. Give me a guy who's putting in effort 150 times a year. And, it doesn't help that it's a guy, like I said, who only works one every 5 days.
The part of the problem, though, is you had Mike Trout supporting his comments. There was a lot of base guys that supported his comments. The psychological profile of all baseball players is, to me, I can't even relate to him. But then you look at the psychological profile of a pitcher, and then he's like its own little category. Those guys, I think, Billy, I think they have to, maybe they have to be wired this way to deal with a lot of the disappointment, because you're going to get shelled. You're going to strike out. You're going to have bad performance. You're going to be embarrassed. And I just think they just kind of put themselves in this bubble, this other world bubble. Like this, they're not in the world of reality. They literally, baseball players are in their own little world. And that's the only way they know how to maybe survive all the disappointment that comes with playing their game, because you're not going to go out there and always pitch great. You're not going to always go out there and hit great. And so maybe that's just their way of combating the disappointment that naturally comes along with the nature of their sport.
But doesn't it feel a little gross to get on the side of the owners? Like in any sport, I have a hard time getting on the side of the owners, because they're going to lose $4 billion. A, I don't buy that. B, with the possible exception of the Wilpons in New York, they are all, bathing in cash. Like they have money to spare 10 times over. And I fully believe that they did this with the calculation in mind that the common man, you, me, Billy, all the people out there listening to sports talk radio and reading the sports pages, we're going to not necessarily take the side of the owners, not directly, not going to say I'm really into the owner, but they were definitely going to be upset with the players if they balked at the notion of not going along with whatever deal it took to get baseball playing again, because people want the sport back. As maybe relatively unpopular as it is, either in comparison to the NFL or as to how popular it once was, people still watch baseball in mass. Otherwise, the owners wouldn't have $4 billion to lose. So they knew that people wanted their sports back. They have no sports right now. Baseball was the one that was closest. And I think the owners took a calculated look at this and said, we can do whatever they want, because people are going to yell at whoever stops this sport from going out there. So if we go out there now, switch it up on the players on the deal we already made, say, yeah, we know we made a deal, but now that we're getting close, we want to make a new deal. Yeah. And if the players did anything other than say, yes, of course, let's do that. Okay, wonderful. Then you, me, and everybody else is going to say, oh, these greedy players, they're horrible. Again, if they could get somebody other than Blake Snell to make that case for them, I think it would be really worthwhile, because I do think that there is a case to be made that not only did we already have a deal, not only do the owners have long careers and lots of money, but we have every expectation that when our CBA is up in a year and a half or whatever it is, whatever we agree to, even if we say this is only for these 3 months, there's no way that the owners won't say, well, hold on a second. For you showed us that for 3 months this worked, so don't tell us that this won't work, over the next 10 years, 5 years of the CBA. As bad a look as Blake Snell is giving this, and as David Price gives everything he speaks to, the fact of the matter is I can't get on the side of ownership probably in any sport ever. I can't do that.
Go ahead, Bill. You guys.
Yeah, no, my biggest thing is, like, I'd love to see the reaction of the players that when the Snell video came out. Like, granted, he was saying what they wanted to say, but how many of them just kind of, like, gave one of those because they're like, shit, we couldn't get somebody else out there. Like, this is how we were represented. Not that they disagreed with what he was saying. It's just, like I said earlier, he delivered the message, doing it, like, the way he did over Twitch and just talking about it. Like, I got to assume a lot of the MLB PA were pissed that was, like, their first big message that got out about this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hey, don't kid yourself. I mean, the owners, are you kidding me? They'll crooks, a lot of them, and they'll take advantage of the players. There's no way they want to open up their books and show, because the NFL the NFL has done it time and time again with these other revenue streams that they don't disclose to the players. They're always trying to, most of these leagues, especially the NFL, but even baseball, the owners, they don't want to really show the players their books, because they're of course they're trying to siphon money so that the player, in ways that the players don't find out about it. But the players got to understand, man, their game is not so popular that it can overcome their attitudes. Like, they are a big part of the survival of that game going forward. Their attitudes, how they approach the game, just their personalities. and it's the arrogance and the tone deafness. They're so obtuse to what people, how they really are being looked at. And you have to be sensitive to the times we're going through. Blake, he might have been right. At the end of the day, his message, okay, I think we can all kind of get on board with it, but it's the delivery and how he acts when he delivers that message that is like, dude, go screw yourself, man. Seriously.
So I think the players I mean, I fully expect somebody other than, the world's most hated agent and now one of the least liked players in the world in Blake Snell, somebody else is going to get out in front for the players, because I think what their next move could be, and I think they may have already started in this direction, is to say, okay, you want a profit share? Show us the books. Go ahead. We're going to do this. Let's do it for real. Let's see what the profit is. Let's see it all. Show us those books, because just like the players don't want to give in before a next CBA, I guarantee you the owners don't want to open their books up before a next CBA either. And I think that ultimately that's one of the complicating factors in all of this. Like if they had just agreed to a CBA 6 months ago and they were in the first year of it, I think everyone goes, yeah, whatever, we'll agree to anything because we have 9 more years before we have to renegotiate this sucker. But this thing's coming up soon. And again, I think it's after next season. I don't know if that's exactly correct, but it's coming up soon. So anything that they agree to now is going to be used against the players. And if the owners are forced to open up the books, well, that's going to be used against them. So I think that's the way the players can kind of reclaim the narrative. Like, listen, we were willing to work with them. Yes, we got off to a rough start. The Blake Snells of the world made us look bad. But then we took a breath and we looked at it and we said, all right, well, maybe this makes sense. But the owners won't show us, they want us to share in the profit, but they won't really show us what the profit is.
Let me ask you guys a question. Because we talked about this, Marshall, like 3 weeks ago. And you asked me the question, which sport gets back sooner? Okay. And that was 3 weeks ago. And my take 3 weeks ago was it's the NBA because of the commissioner. I just feel like, Adam Silver's just the most competent, commissioner of all the leagues. So I'm gonna back that horse as far as the sports that's gonna get back before any other one. Do you have any feelings? And I can't remember what you said at the time, but do you feel like which sport is at this point closest to actually doing something and getting their sport back playing, or at least getting started? Like baseball hasn't even gotten started. What do you feel like the sport that's going to get it back to the first?
I'll let Billy go first on this one.
All right. I think it's the NBA. I agree with you on the NBA, but my biggest thing with the NBA is just roster size alone. 12, 15 guys at most are on that team. With hockey's a bigger bench. Football, is obviously huge, but baseball is a ton of people. But baseball makes more sense because the game's based on social distancing. The closest thing you have to deal with is the batter, catcher, umpire. Like those 3 guys, and then maybe some, people on the bench, and that's it.
Yeah. I mean, my take was in fact basketball, because pretty much what Billy says, the roster is smaller. You can literally play it in a sequestered off space. You can, you take a building and you just throw up the yellow tape around that building and you say, there's whatever it is, 15-man roster and a 5-man coaching staff and 4 refs, whatever it is, you don't need that many people in there for basketball. So it was the easiest one in my eyes, or in my mind, to get off the ground, because, think about the Celtics training facility. When you eliminate the need for fans, the number of places that you can do it in a training facility like that. You can do it on a college campus. Any one of these Division I schools are going to have very nice gyms and facilities. You could do it there. So the sheer number of places you could do it and the small number of people required to do it was the combination to me that said NBA be back first.
Hey, by the way, before I say what I'm going to say, your neighbor is now mowing his lawn right now, Marshall, behind you. So he obviously was shamed into seeing yours being mowed. So he's out there mowing his lawn right now.
That's true. You can see it. There he is. He's out there doing it.
I feel like Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, to some degree, they're so, like, culturally speaking, the front offices between, let's just compare the NBA versus the NFL. They couldn't be more different. The NFL, PR be damned. We're going to go make money. You know, they have realized, the NFL has realized it can overcome pretty much any scandal, right? I mean, go down the list of scandals that have kind of, oh, this is gonna tear down the game. This is gonna tear down the game. All these concussions and Ray Rice and on, Bounty Gate, all these things, okay? None of it is ever gonna affect. So the NFL knows that. And so it's about, how do I make money, and we'll just handle the PR as it comes. Adam Silver is very PR conscious in the sense that he wants to be a league where, you know, he gives power to the players. They have influence. You know, he's worried about social issues and how it impacts the game. And so he's like worried about a lot of things by restarting his game. If he had consulted with NFL owners, they'd be like, dude, drop your balls and let's go. But Adam Silver is a conscientious commissioner. He's a forward-thinking, progressive kind of commissioner. And by being that guy, which I kind of like in him, I think it's kind of hurting him when it comes to getting his sport back and running right now.
I do think it was notable that one of the sports that I said isn't coming back, their season is over, is the NHL. And their commissioner, Gary Bettman, comes out this week and says there is no consideration to not finishing the season. He is bound and determined that they are going to somehow finish the NHL season. I'm not really clear how. I mean, they would have to go with one of these, what I'll call North Dakota plans, where they just go hold themselves up at some hockey rink and come up with some slimmed down version of the postseason. Has to make Bruins fans ecstatic, as they were the team that was best positioned for a playoff run. But I mean, that could just be him being wildly unrealistic, but he's saying, no, we are definitely finishing the season at this point. So you've got all four sports talking about coming back. Everyone says that they're going to do, well, in the case of the NFL, not coming back, but even starting out time, they put out their preseason schedules this week. Like, we're not even blowing that sucker off. We're doing the whole damn thing. So the NFL, they just don't care.
They don't care, man. They don't care.
So I've learned I have to mute Billy when Billy's not talking, because his YouTube gives us feedback. So I've been doing a pretty good job, by the way. Nobody, I don't think, has even noticed that I've been riding the mute unmute button with Billy. But there you go. That's what I'm doing with Billy.
Figured it out, because it was tough to do.
That's okay though, Billy. Just know that if you try to inject too fast, I might have to unmute you really quick. But it solved the problem. Billy can listen. He's good. Look, see, he's unmuted now.
If I want to jump in, I'll raise my hand. Yeah. Easy enough.
But speaking of football, we started to move over into that sport, and I will tell you that Tom Brady just can't stay out of the headlines. This week we hear, I don't even remember whose reporting it was. Was it Gary Myers who did the reporting that that basically, you know, all of the reasons we've heard why Tom Brady was leaving, we've now added to it. And this one perhaps unexpected, because the one thing I think we'd learned from, or thought we learned anyway, from Tom versus Time, and from what we learned, is that he and Josh were besties, right? He and Josh McDaniels, the offensive coordinator, were good friends, and maybe that was able to sustain his time in New England a little bit, because that gave him a bit of distance between he and Bill Belichick, who we were pretty sure didn't get along. And now this week we're hearing that that relationship had deteriorated as well, and he and Josh Daniels weren't getting along anymore either. I don't know. Tom Brady came out and pretty hardcore denied it. Ted, well, do you believe it to be true?
Okay. Marshall, thank you for just teaming me up with this. Is it possible, you guys, okay, and all the hundreds and thousands of people who are listening to us right now, is it possible that when people give statements, when people go out on Twitter and say something, when they give interviews, that they're maybe not saying the full truth, or not, you know, not really being honest about how they feel? Like, you can give a flowery statement about, Tom can give a flowery statement about Bill Belichick, about his time here and how much he appreciated and how much he's learned and what a great coach he was. But behind the scenes is like MFing the guy. Like, is it possible that that could maybe Bill sends out a statement about Tom, what he meant to the organization and how grateful he was, but then behind the scenes, he's MFing the guy. It's absolutely plausible. And you know how you know that? When you have all these guys, reporters that are in this camp and talking to this camp and getting, they have sources in each individual camp. That's the truth. That's the real truth. So when you hear a statement or Tom said this about Bill, so he must mean it, give me a break, people. You got to be naive and really stupid to buy into that. So the thing about Tom coming out on Instagram and, kind of defending what Gary Myers said about his relationship with Josh McDaniels, you have to understand it's all PR. There are going to be people that are going to believe what Tom had to say. Like, well, Tom refuted it, so it must be true. Oh my God. Of course there were problems there. Is the answer. Of course there was. And here's the thing. Josh McDaniels eventually, he probably had an alliance with Tom, right? My feeling is Josh McDaniels isn't happy there, guys. He wants out of there. All right. I mean, and there's reports that we know he's tried to get out of there, but we know that there's something going on with Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels. So there's always an alliance, I think, with Tom. However, eventually Tom's going to go and Josh is going to have to hitch his wagon to Bill Belichick. And so eventually that relationship that Tom had with Josh McDaniels is going to fray because he can't continue that alliance with Tom because Bill's trying to get rid of him. So, and Josh wants to stay employed. So it's a dynamic it's maybe there's a lot there to it, but you have to understand Josh McDaniels cares about Josh McDaniels and forming an alliance with whoever's going to give him the job. And that's Bill. And so I could see those two having problems at the end. Absolutely. I could see that being the case.
So our YouTube commenter extraordinaire is ready to blame Tom Brady for this, or at least suggest that that maybe he is the problem, that he is basically the guy who's breaking up with everybody and suddenly nobody's getting along with Tom Brady. And rather than that be, Josh McDaniels making a measured choice on who to back as who he's going to hang out with, maybe Tom Brady just did become an impossible guy to work with. Is that possible? I mean, I look at it and I say that there certainly, if we ever try to make that comparison to the real world, like a normal workplace, let's pretend for a moment that an NFL team is a normal workplace. I have worked with people who, there was a time that they loved their job, right? They were into the job and everything was good. And then they slowly became less and less happy with the job and they became impossible to work with because they'd show up to work and they'd be like, I hate this place. This place sucks. This is the worst place to work. And at some point you become like, well, why don't you quit? Why do you still work here? I think a lot of that same mindset can exist inside these multi-million-dollar, very public-facing jobs. And just because you're a quarterback of an NFL team does not mean that you can't, in fact, be a guy who is normal and just becomes tired with the workplace and at some point, turns everybody else off.
But why do people and just to be clear, the typical work environment is completely opposite of what an NFL work environment is. But just for fun, we'll say there is similarity, and there is some similarities in what you're saying here, Marshall. And part of it is if Tom Brady was paid what he thought he should be paid and was given the respect that he thought he should be giving, whatever that looks like, if it's, access for Alex Guerrero or more liberties in game plan, whatever it is, if Tom was given the respect and the contract that he felt he deserved, my guess is he would have great attitude. He'd be going to work but the last couple of years, we know that wasn't the case, that he wasn't happy with his contract, that he wasn't happy with the perceived disrespect that he was giving. And so it had an effect on his relationships probably with those people that he's been dealing with for a very, very long time. And so I think you're absolutely right when you say that. And so it's kind of like, Tom's happiness was really probably predicated on whether or not he got the contract that he felt like he deserved, or whether he was given, power in the organization. And now that it sounds like the last couple of years he wasn't given that, and so you're probably seeing a guy that was more difficult to work with than he'd ever been in the past, and then relationships start to fray from there.
And the thing of it is, the fact that McDaniels was one to fall, maybe he was just the last man standing at some point. I mean, who knows? Maybe he and Julian Edelman aren't on the best terms anymore either. I mean, we do know that there was, as ridiculous as I think it is when we sit here and try to dissect and analyze follows and unfollows on Instagram and Twitter and all of that. As ridiculous as all of that is, we do know that at one point Julian Edelman unfollowed Tom Brady on Instagram and then followed him back. And so, maybe it was just a fraying of the relationships from top to bottom because he was unhappy and then he made everyone else unhappy around him. And
Yeah.
while I'm not going to blame the end of the season or the way it ended on Tom Brady, he certainly didn't make it easier. Like his performance and his attitude. I mean, I was there. I watched that Miami game, and the last regular season one at home that they lost. And it most certainly wasn't his fault that the defense couldn't stop a bunch of, semi-crappy players from marching down the field at the end of the game.
Hey.
But his entire attitude, in as much as you could tell by watching body language and sideline behavior through that entire game, was crappy.
Okay, hold on though. Hold on. And I'm glad you brought this up because I heard others. I think it was Felder Mass talking about the Miami game. I just want to make something very clear about the Miami game. So if you're going to reference Tom Brady's attitude in the Miami game, which I get it, it's fair to mention because it was pretty much out there for all of us to see that he was a sourpuss. I mean, hell, he was for the whole season. But do you remember what happened in that Miami game right before halftime? Do you remember what happened?
I believe that's where they opted to just let the clock burn down, right? Not take the timeout.
Okay. You had a chance with, I don't know, 2 timeouts and over a minute left.
I think it was like a minute 30 or something like that.
To go down and try and get a field goal at least before you win. No team is better at getting points before halftime in the 2-minute drill than the New England Patriots, all right, for the last 20 freaking years. Bill opts to not do that, sit on the ball, go in at halftime. So, you know what? If I'm Tom, I'm a little pissed off too. I'm a little bit of a sourpuss too. And guess what? Those 3 points that they maybe could have gotten right before halftime would have been the difference of getting a first-round bye, not getting a first-round bye. It might have been the difference in potentially at least playing in the AFC Championship game, if not the Super Bowl. So that one game, when it's referenced about Tom's attitude, I have to kind of go, whoa, whoa, whoa. If you remember that game specifically, Bill gave up on Tom. Bill gave up, I think, to some degree on the team in that situation. And so I think more kind of, displeasure should be pushed more towards Bill's side than Tom in that game specifically.
Would you have wanted Tom Brady to come back this year?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And I think it's so fascinating. We're going to sit here. We're going to judge Bill off of the quarterbacks that he's got this year. Oh, he's got Stidham. So a lot of people say, hey, if they go 9-7 with Jared Stidham, the people are going to go, that's a good year. I mean, if they go to the playoffs with Jared Stidham, let's just say they go to the playoffs with Jared Stidham and they get bounced in the first round. I don't think they're going to go to the playoffs this year. I'm not sure they're going to have a winning season. Point is, people are going to give Bill the benefit of the doubt because it was Jared Stidham. But what people are going to forget is that they could have had Tom Brady. Yep. Right? So if they don't make the playoffs this year, but they look good and there's chance that they can maybe, are going to look good in the future, that to me is not satisfying because you still could have had Tom Brady as your quarterback. And if Tom's your quarterback, you have a chance to go to the Super Bowl every single year.
I just feel like it's the equivalent of staying together for the kids. Like at this point, people have used the word divorce, and I don't think it's more appropriate it's been more appropriately used in sports than in this case. Like these two guys were essentially a professional marriage for the better part of 20 years. And I just honestly think the time had come. And frankly, from the point of view of what we do and something to talk about, I am excited to see Tom Brady play in a different uniform. I think that's going to be great theatrics. And the fact that he's surrounded by a much more interesting cast of characters than he would have had here in New England. He's out from under Bill Belichick. All of that is more interesting to watch.
Phenomenal.
I just honestly wish they had gotten me, Cam Newton. Like Cam Newton's still out there. Bring me Cam Newton. Then I'm on board. I don't believe in Jared Stidham. I don't have a lot of, to your point, hope that this is going to be a playoff team. I know that people have done the, now that they have the schedule, they've done the breakdown and like they're going to win this one and lose this one. And I've heard people do that who are theoretically in the know, and they've gotten anywhere from like 11 wins to 6 wins, depending on how they decide each of these kind of goes. So I don't have a lot of hope for this season.
Do you know why they're not bringing in Cam Newton? Okay. You think Bill wants to bring in a quarterback that's bigger than him? Do you like that is like figuratively speaking bigger than him? Like Cam Newton, you come in and it's this big personality. It's Cam is kind of, it's about, he's got an NFL MVP, a pelt on the wall from 2015. He was at one time. He's not because of the injuries. Considered one of the best quarterbacks. In his attitude, you can tell he's kind of, it doesn't necessarily go jive with.
Hey, Billy's back.
Oh, he's back. But here's the point. I don't think Bill wants to bring in a quarterback who's got a big personality. Bill wants to have control over his quarterback. He lost control over Tom. Tom was a runaway train. Tom was so damn good, so successful that he couldn't control him. Hell, Tom didn't go to OTAs the last 2 years. The last 2 years, your quarterback thing, that is, Bill wants control and be able to tell guys what to do, and you better do what I say or else I'll get you the hell out. He couldn't do that to Tom because Tom was so damn successful and it was considered the greatest of all time, and you can't just cut the greatest of all time when he's still playing at a high level like he was a couple of years ago. He wants control over his quarterback. He doesn't want to bring in a big personality quarterback because he's tired of that dynamic, I think, and he just wants a guy that he can control.
So I'm going to ask Billy, now that he's made his triumphant return to our program, who on Tom Brady, on the starting quarterback, who do you want in here next year, Billy? Who would you like to see?
Jared Stidham. I'm here for Stidham. There's nobody you can bring in that I'm going to be excited about. I said it a million times. The Brady bar is set way too high. You can't fill that void with a veteran replacement. I'd rather give Stidham a shot. I'd be content as an 8-8 team knowing that they're developing under a new quarterback.
I can't get excited about Jared Stidham. I just can't do it. It's I don't know. I like even if it were one of these highish draft picks, like if they had gone out and made the thing that everyone wanted them to do and made some move in the first round and gotten Tua or whoever, and maybe, you know what, I'm not a good student of history because no one was probably very excited about Tom Brady getting the opportunity to start here in New England. But, that doesn't happen twice. It doesn't happen again. And so that's my problem with getting all pumped and jacked about old Jared Stidham.
But Marshall, let me ask you about Jared Stidham. So you're like, I don't want to see Jared Stidham. Do you know what he is as a quarterback?
No, listen, I am more than happy to admit I know nothing about Jared Stidham. I'm just telling you that my gut, which is worthless because I'm no football scout, but my gut tells me he's nothing. My history of knowing things about Bill Belichick, I believe that he believes he can do it with any quarterback. And maybe there was a time when that was true, but I think this is a more quarterback-driven league now than it's ever been. And I just don't think that's true. And I also think there's a ceiling. And maybe, I think Jimmy Garoppolo is probably a much better quarterback than Jared Stidham. But even you saw with him in the game manager mold that there's a ceiling. Now, his ceiling was pretty good, got him to a Super Bowl, and they were even leading at some point late in the game. But do we believe that that's Jared Stidham? Do we particularly when surrounded by the typical set of players that you surround him by, right?
Here's my guess with Billy, that Billy wants to see Jared Stidham. Maybe I don't want to put words in her mouth, Billy, but for the same reason I do, is that I don't know. and I want to see, and I'll find out. Like, I know what Brian Hoyer is. I know what Cam Newton is. I don't really know what Jared Stidham is. And it's the not knowing that gets me, I think, is why I want to see Jared Stidham. I want to find out. We don't really know what Jared Stidham is. And so if we know what these other guys are, it's kind of like, why do I want to see these guys? I've seen them for years, and they're not, they're not that good. Let's see what Stidham can do.
100%. That's what I meant. It's something new. It's something new. I can't get excited if you told me Andy Dalton was coming in. I wouldn't get excited if you told me Cam Newton was coming in. But it's the unknown with Stidham that has me excited, has me curious, and like I said, has me willing to root on a team that could go 7-9 and 8-8 just because I'm seeing something develop. You're seeing something new being created, something we're not used to in 20 years, and that, as a football fan, excites me.
Yeah, but you know what? That's to say that you want to see Jared Stidham because of the unknown. That's like saying, all the fans who wanted to see Michael Bishop. Like, oh, yeah, we got to get Michael Bishop in there. The promise of the greatest quarterback that New England never saw, and Michael Bishop. You were around for Michael Bishop. Were you excited to see that guy come into a game?
Bishop in the preseason would run around, throw a Hail Mary, and we'd have this huge Hail Mary completion, and win a preseason game against the Giants 17-15. People would go nuts for Bishop, man. You're right. That was Michael Bishop. Like, I don't think he ever threw the ball on time. I think he ran around, threw it up, and people loved that he was just so different. He was so different, man. I love it. Hey, can I ask you guys one question about the one storyline that was brought up all week that I could not believe how much passion and emotion was around it? Was the Joe Buck saying that they're going to pump crowd noise into these games? I would love to get your opinion on that real quick. Can I just give you mine? Is the only comparison I can ever kind of think of, if you've ever watched a spring football game for college football, the spring games, okay, they have spring games in college football where it's, Colorado was black gold game, and it was the last kind of scrimmage at the end of spring football. And they would put it on TV. Well, there wouldn't be that many fans out there. So it was a very sterile, kind of quiet way of watching football. Spring football games, to me, it's like they're not exciting because there's not a lot of fans. My point is, I would love to see, I don't think it's a bad thing. Not love to see it, but I don't think it would be a bad thing to pump crowd noise in to these telecasts to kind of help the enjoyment of the overall, product. So I don't have as much of a anti-pumping in, crowd noise opinion as some of the guys at the Sports Hub have had this week.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it either. And Joe Buck, I think, is taking himself too seriously. Like, it would be non-journalistic or something to not have crowd noise. I told this story last week that I used to have a job as a producer for the Spanish language rights holders for the Red Sox. And we were a shoestring operation, to say the least. So we very rarely traveled with the team. So even when they were on the road, we would do the games from the press box at Fenway Park, because that's where our broadcast booth was set up. And most nights what we would do is there was somebody at the other end at the actual game, and we would get an electronic feed of the real crowd noise, and we would play that under us. So it would make sense. It would be the real crowd noise. And the only hard part for us was adjusting the delay to make what we were seeing on TV, because that's where we would watch the game, and the crowd noise that was coming in, we would have to play around to get them lined up. But every once in a while, we would lose that connection. And so what I had, because I was the producer of this, was a CD of generic crowd noise that I would just hit play on. And I can tell you that crowd never got overly excited. They never got overly bored. It was just this general kind of, yeah, popcorn, yeah, in the background, because to call a game, or really to listen to a game being called with no crowd noise, is dreadful. Like, you can't do it. Or you can, obviously, but it's dreadful to listen to. So of course they're going to pump in crowd noise. Of course they're going to put something in there, even if it's just the generic kind of white noise, crowd noise that we used. Because if it's just Joe Buck in the crack of the bat, people aren't going to get on board with that. So Billy, I don't know. Was this something that Felder and Maz were all worked up about? Because I'll
Oh,
tell you, those
oh.
are guys that can get worked up about anything.
They do. They get worked up about a lot of stuff, but yeah, they were worked up. Maz and Murray are all in for fake crowd noise, virtual fans. I'm with Felger more in the sense that I think I'd rather no sound. I'd rather listen to the game, listen to the action, and then hear the commentators. I don't need, I'm with you, Marshall, in the sense that I need just a dull tone, because then you got to worry about up in levels for happiness and depression levels in the game and stuff like that. And I don't trust somebody else to do that. So I'd rather just kind of like almost like a dull video game noise. You play MLB on PlayStation, just a simple little crowd noise. Like you said, you hear somebody yell popcorn, you hear a little bit of this, and then allow me to, create the emotions. I don't want some guy with a slider in a studio boosting it because he thinks I should be cheering louder at this point. And I like the idea of being able to hear, like, if football has no crowd, I want to hear like cracking, like shoulder pads. I want to hear trash talk, and knowing that there's enough of a delay that if anything bad is said, it won't go over TV and people won't get pissed. But I need to hear the squeak in basketball, the trash talking in basketball, sports like that. And like, think about hockey. Hockey would sound amazing with no crowd, especially if you allow not miking up the players, but just, more parabolics.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, boys, we're basically out of time at this point. We've got. I've muted the wrong people again. I'm not good at this. I'm not good at writing mutes very well. But we have got McCarthy and McCone coming up next. I finally got my mutes correct there. We've got McCarthy and McCone coming up next. We're going to keep doing this every weekend as long as you guys allow us. And I went and bought a fancy looking mic. It's not actually fancy, but my crappy gamer headphones basically broke these things that I had been using. So I went on to Amazon. It cost, I think, $40. I don't know that it actually sounds any better than the little built-in microphone on these headphones, but it looks fancy. So I'm completely on board with that. So now that I bought it, we can't give up after just 1 week because, I've got to make this worth its time.
Let's keep it going, man. I mean, hell, I don't know, who knows how long this quarantine is going to go. I'll keep going as long as we have to, buddy.
All right. Billy, Lanni, and I are going to figure out his technical issues at another time. But guys, I'm going to get out of the way so the McTakey brothers can come in. We'll do this again.
Sounds good.
All right. See you.
Boys.